All right, part 2 of chapter 2. So we left off and finished self-esteem. So sources of self, I'm not going to go over these a lot. You can read about them in your textbook, but how we learn about and gain who we are through gender, family, and culture, especially family. I'm not going to go over this. All right, the public self. The slide I didn't go over won't be on your midterm. It's just something kind of an application that I did that I thought was kind of cool. So the public self is the self that we present to others, okay? Why is managing your public self so important? Because that's what others see. People don't see different sides of us. They see what we show them. So it's really important that you manage your public self. Face is your public self that you want others to see and know. You don't need to know that it was coined by Erving Goffman, but if you've ever heard of like saving face or something like that, that's what we're talking about when we talk about face. And then a mask is a public self designed to strategically veil your private self. Okay? So let's talk about identity management, or how we manage our identity. We have multiple identities, so it's not that we're completely different people around different people in our lives, but we have different sides of us, right? Like I don't act the same around my students as I do my husband, okay? That wouldn't necessarily be appropriate, right? I think your book gives the example of maybe at work, we're competent, we're on top of it, we're very professional, and then we go home and we're like, Mom, you want to make me a grilled cheese? Like that. So we have multiple identities. Identity management is collaborative. This one might sound kind of weird, but bear with me. So we help other people manage their identities, and they help us manage our identities. So a way that we do this is by helping them save face, like I mentioned earlier. You've probably heard of that term. So saving face is kind of like helping them like I can't think of the word, y'all, I'm sorry. Helping them maintain, as if that was that hard of a word, helping them maintain kind of their dignity, their identity, really. So let me give you an example of how it can be collaborative. Let's say that you are in line and someone walks up, and there's people like this all the time. It always amazes me, but I don't want to judge because I'm sure I've been that person once or twice. But, let's say it's a line scattered. Oh, let me give you more. So you know how sometimes in a store, there's like one line and then it feeds into the different registers, or there's like different lines. So let's say there's one line that feeds into the 3 registers at a clothing store. So you're in line, and someone walks up and kind of gets in line behind the person checking out. And someone in line is like, excuse me, all of us are in line. There's one line. And they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. You might help them manage their identity by being like, I almost did the same thing. Like, it's confusing, to kind of help them ease that and help them, not feel as embarrassed, I guess. So it really is collaborative. This might sound silly. It might sound weird, but we really do work together to manage our identity. And identity management may be conscious or unconscious. I want you to remember this. As I said before, this class is not to make you paranoid. However, sometimes we are aware of our identity management and sometimes we aren't. So I would say 2 situations where we're for sure aware of identity management would be a first date and a job interview, or you should be aware, super aware of how you are coming across. So when we say conscious, we mean we're aware of how we are behaving, how we are acting, that's behaving, how we are, how we're coming across to that person, what we're saying, how we're dressed, how we're presenting ourselves, everything that has to do with our identity. We're very aware. And then unconscious is, maybe when you're hanging out with your friends and y'all are out to eat or at a concert, you're not really thinking of like, how am I coming across right now? Am I being authentic to myself? So just something to keep in mind. And it's okay that it's not always on a conscious level. It's not necessarily supposed to be. I don't know that we have that that bandwidth and the energy to constantly be aware of it. All right, more on identity management. People differ in their degree of identity management. So there are what's called low self-monitors and high self-monitors. So low self-monitors are people that just constantly say what's on their mind. They're not really thinking about how they're coming across. They're just very little filter. High self-monitors are the opposite. They are very careful about what they say, how they behave, etc. You might think that it's good to be on the high self-monitor, but something interesting that your textbook says is that research shows that people perceive individuals that are low self-monitors to be a lot more trustworthy in what they say, which makes sense, right? I mean, if you know that they don't have much of a filter, you're not going to think that they're, being aware of like what they're saying and trying to manipulate you or possibly trick you, etc. So people differ in their degree of identity management. As you can imagine, somewhere in the middle of a low self-monitor versus a high self-monitor. Obviously, low self-monitors, there can be social implications of just saying whatever you think. And yeah. People manage identities to follow social rules and accomplish goals. So, sorry, I had to move something that is beeping. I hope y'all can't hear that. That's the baby monitor. It keeps turning on and off for some reason. People manage identities to follow social rules. So that's why I have that picture of that shirt on the slide, because we would usually not say that, right? And that's kind of the funny thing, is like that might be the case, but we don't say that. We manage our identities to follow social rules. We all do it, and we kind of should, right? People that don't have social implications, and people might not want to be around them. And then managing your identity doesn't make you dishonest. That's a big thing. When we're talking about identity management, that is not us being fake. That is not us being, dishonest or deceitful. We should manage our identities. That we should, and we should do it in different ways with different people in different situations, so it doesn't make you dishonest. Okay. All right. Impression formation and management online. Just a few kind of fun things to think about. Emailing a professor or boss. I know as a professor, when students email me and call me by my first name, that I am not going to get a good impression of that student. I think that is very disrespectful, regardless of, and I know there are some professors that are like, oh, call me by my first name, but if there's a situation where there's someone of authority, whether it's your boss, whatever, I know some bosses, it might be different, but just for professors, I think it's always good to err on formality and then let them invite you to call them by their first name. Tinder, Match, eHarmony, Bumble, etc. We will talk a lot about online dating. I'm fascinated with online dating. I actually met my husband online. You can judge me, but it's hard to meet people once you are out of school. But I find out when we talk about this, a lot of my students are online. I'm like, wow, it amazes me, and I don't judge them, but it's, when you're in college, depending on what age you are, usually if you're of the typical college age, you're surrounded by people around your age range. But yeah, so online dating is a whole other world. It's crazy. I could go on for hours. But impression formation and management online, people are deceitful. Think about what pictures you post, what you say about yourself, how you form impressions of other people based on their online profiles, stuff like that. Facebook, I need to update that. I don't think a lot of people use Facebook anymore. I mean, I still have one, but I'm much more on Instagram and TikTok and Twitter. So same thing, how you form impressions based on other people, based on their social media, and how people form impressions, and you manage that with yours, and then texting people that you recently met. All right. Now let's talk about what's called the Johari window. This is of self-disclosure. So let's start with open. So if you look at the chart, open is known to other, known to self. That is something that I know about myself and you know about me. So I have on white Kendra Scott earrings. You know that my earrings are white by looking at me. I don't have to tell you that. I know that my earrings are white. Okay, so that's a example of open. Now let's move down to hidden. Known to self but not known to other. So hidden, that could be basically things that I know about myself, but you don't know them unless I tell you or to tell you. Yes, that can be deep, dark secrets, but that can also be just simple things. Like when I was little, I wanted to be a famous singer because I took voice lessons and I loved singing. My favorite movie was Selena. So that's not like deep and dark, but it's something that other people might not know about me. So with hidden, just keep that in mind. It can be a big range of information. All right, let's get a little bit more complicated. Blind. Blind. Not known to self, but known to other. How is that possible that there could be something that we don't know about ourselves, but other people know it about us? Well, if you've ever seen the movie The Breakup, there's an incredible example of this. So Vince Vaughn, spoiler alert, they break up. Vince Vaughn is talking to his friend who is also a bartender, and his friend is like, oh, and he's talking about the breakup, and his friend is like, you're the funnest guy in the room, but everyone knows that she didn't stand a chance. You're going to do what you want to do. And he was like, what are you talking about? And in that moment, he learned something about himself that his friends knew, but he didn't realize about himself. Okay. And then unknown, not known to self, but known to other. So this could be, the easiest example I can give you is in maybe like emergency situations. We can't accurately predict how we would react in certain situations. Okay. So it's one thing, like I don't know how I would react if there was a tornado. I don't want to get too grim here. I don't know how I would react. Y'all don't know how I would react. So that's kind of unknown. Okay. All right. And then finally, self-disclosure. Self-disclosure, and I'm going to go kind of quick because I only have 15 minutes on these videos and I don't want to have to make a third one for y'all. For your sake, not mine. I don't mind making a third one. All right. Self-disclosure is telling someone information about yourself that they wouldn't have known unless you had told them. It is about yourself. If I were to tell you something about my husband, that is not self-disclosure. It's also what they wouldn't know unless you had told them. Intimacy in relationships, both partners need to share private information, and there needs to be reciprocity. There needs to be reciprocity where it's that give and take, that back and forth. It doesn't have to be instantly. Sometimes it is where you just someone shares something and then you open up as well, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. But over time, there needs to be reciprocity for there to be intimacy in the relationship. Each partner responds to self-disclosure with care and support. That's obviously really important. So how self-disclosure can be positive. It can bring people closer together. It feels good to get things off of our chest. It can help people understand you better if you self-disclose and they're like, oh, this is why I act this way or whatever. How can self-disclosure be risky or negative? Obviously blackmail. I know we're not in high school anymore, but this still happens where people can blackmail you. People can use that information against you. People can judge you, and they can even end the relationship based on what they have learned about you. Okay? So besides personal relationships, in what situations or relationships is self-disclosure necessary? That can range anything from a lawyer to, especially in the medical field, in therapy, right? Like therapy is a big one. What you put into it is what you get out of it. So self-disclosure is really, really important, and people vary on their comfort with self-disclosure. And I would challenge you to keep that in mind, and wherever you fall on the continuum, to just keep that in mind and understand that so if you're really open, understand that other people aren't, and that's okay. If you're not open and you're more private, understand that some people are fine telling you things, and why you might be like, why are you telling me this? They really don't mind. They're not trying to freak you out. So we have to understand where people are with self-disclosure. Again, I'm sorry I'm going so quick, but that is it for chapter 2. If you need to pause it and go back, I just didn't want to have to make you another video.